The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place. The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place.
Yo, what's up, Theorites? Just a quick word before this episode starts. What we have here is a little ATT Confidential, one of our many bonus episodes on Patreon. So if you like what you hear, head over to alientheorist.com, find the Patreon link, support your boys, support your favorite show. We have another 45 or 50 episodes like this, plus another 100 or more of other shows we've done with all the after hours, etc. I know you hear the spiel all the time. So we thought you'd give you a little teaser to see what you're missing out on. All right. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Peace.
And now, for another much anticipated episode of ATT Confidential. I'm Braden.
I'm Dan. I'm 95% sure that those never line up.
I think Zell has his work cut out for him whenever he edits us doing those.
Yes, the oft requested.
Forget,
and
we're not talking about
ATT
that. First thing.
No, what? ATT Confidential.
Oh yeah, they are much requested.
In the poll, it is the number one requested or appreciated thing of our Patreon.
There'll be more coming now. I think the only holdup really for me and Dan doing these more often is that we alternate taking turns of who chooses a topic. And then sometimes we'll do a good one and then the other person's like, well, I don't know what to do next. And then it'll take a while to kind of get reorganized. But today, everyone knows what Operation Paperclip is.
Some people don't know what Operation Paperclip is.
I'll give a summary because you know what? To be honest, it needs its own case file. It's crazy. Like Operation Paperclip on our main show eventually is going to have a case file. But to sum it up briefly, after World War II, when the Allies won and, they crushed the German forces and they arrested everyone, for all the war crimes they did against humanity, the United States, with Operation Paperclip, took their brightest scientists and Nazi scientists and was like, hey, listen, you come do your thing and bring all your research with us, and we'll pardon you for all your crimes. We're just going to look the other way. No big deal.
Yeah, that's more or less what it is. I mean, the UK had their own version as well. I think it was Operation Overcast. Overcast and Paperclip kind of lined up together, but most people credit Operation Paperclip as building the foundation for what is now NASA. So you smuggled out all your German rocket scientists, like rocketry specialists, engineers, to come over here. Werner von Braun was one of the big catches for the U.S.
Yeah, and their rocket systems wouldn't be what it is without Operation Paperclip.
Right. It definitely probably would have taken us a lot longer to do it. The scientists and the engineering the science and the engineering know-how that we gained from the Nazi scientists that were brought over it gave us a big old head start. Or we would have just been working from scratch at that point. So
now, the Americans went in, they'd offer these German scientists sweetheart deals eventually, like come to the United States, work for us. We will give you diplomatic immunity. Basically, we'll look the other way to all the war crimes and heinous things you did in the name of science, but you need to come and work with us, with our scientists. That's how they did it. They would offer these deals. They would be approached. They would approach these people. Now, on to what we're discussing today.
On the other side of the soon-to-be Iron Curtain, you had the Soviets. So the Soviets also wanted a piece of the rocket pie. They had, even as soon as like 1945 and 1946, you had these Soviet survey teams called trophy brigades, which were made up of scientists, soldiers, industrial managers, and actually party representatives that went all across Europe and Asia, pretty much cataloging all of the material that was going to be delivered back to the Soviet Union, which they deemed as part of their due reparations for the war. Since, the Soviet Union took tremendous losses during the war.
Yeah, huge.
More than any other allied power at the time.
But they're just walking around. This is now us. This is now Russia. We'll take this.
This is ours. This is ours. This is ours. Check it off. Check it off, comrade. Yeah.
Write it on the list.
Da. So they had their own version of Operation Paperclip, and it was referred to as Operation Osoaviakhim, which was their...
I think that's roughly translated to come with me or I'll kill you. I think. I don't know for sure. I could be wrong.
And you wouldn't be completely wrong if that's actually what it referred to. Most of the reports that we get from this program or the experiences that scientists had going into this program, we get from Helmut Grotrub and his wife. And Helmut was a German engineer and rocket scientist. And he's actually, if you look him up, he's the inventor of what we have today, the smart card. If you've ever worked in a government job or any job where you needed like a clearance card, a data code on there, he was the inventor of that technology. During World War II, he worked in the German V2 rocket program, and he actually worked under Wernher von Braun, not directly together, but they would exchange notes and things like that. So Gottrub had actually been approached by the Americans before, but Gottrub actually communicated with the Soviets and kind of turned down the Americans and offered his services to the Soviets if they were to give him like complete freedom. That was his terms on why he would come help them. And he offered up to the Soviets help in two ways. He told the Soviets that where to find the other skilled Germans who might be useful to their rocket program. And he also directed the Russians on where to find more of the equipment that was used to build V2 rockets.
It's interesting because he was basically like, I can't do a German accent. That's what I was going to do. But he's basically told the Russians, let me come with you on my terms, and I will sell out all my friends down the river. I'll tell you where they are, how to get them.
And the Soviets obliged. I mean, they were happy to offer him, anything. I mean, they probably would have promised him the moon at this point, because, promises. It didn't really matter at this point. They just wanted the technology. They just wanted the scientists. They were getting these scientists, whether they liked it or not. So by April 1946, you had this kind of the big big bad of the Soviet security forces, Chief Lavrenti Beria, who made a report to Stalin on all of the valuable work in Germany that was being done in the 12 months before the April 1946. So in that time, Soviet personnel had collected and translated a ton of German documentation on missiles. They created special rocket institute at Nordhausen, which will come back into play later, which they made pretty much their nerve center for their operations. And they also established 5 technological design bureaus that were focused on different areas of missile development. And then the last thing they really did was they actually reconstructed one of the factories at this place called Mittelwerk. And that was enough for them to allow them to resume productions of V2 rockets.
It's interesting. So they built a basically identical lab in Russia or in Germany?
In Germany. So before they had moved all of their stuff from Germany, they actually rebuilt a lot of stuff because they kind of made the case, or the Soviet intelligence officers and stuff that were on the ground were like, it'll be way easier for us to just recommission all of these V2 sites that are technically now ours, since it was kind of like the Soviet occupation zone at this point. And
basically any reason to stay out of Russia a little longer.
But they figured this would be more simple than actually building it all from scratch, because they did ship out a lot of material when they when they arrived at Mittelwerk. After a couple months, they had actually loaded up about 5,647 tons of equipment to ship back to the Soviet Union. So a couple days, so by April 17th, 1946, you had the Soviet ministers from the USSR, and they issued what is known as Decree number 874-366-SS, which ordered the Ministry of Aviation Industry, also known as MAP, to deport 1,400 engineers and workers in the USSR. So including family members, number of deported was about 3,500 people at this point. So these are people, what is now, when they say USSR, they still mean it's like all the German engineers that are in Germany, because now Germany, that part of Germany, Eastern Germany, is now part of the USSR.
Yeah, it's now German Russia.
Yeah. It's not like you're moving from like Moscow to St. Petersburg. You're moving from Germany to Moscow.
Yeah.
May 13th, same year, Stalin actually signed a top-level government decree which established a kind of skeletal network of what would be development and research and production facilities all around Moscow, Russia's capital city, to support the work on these missiles. Stalin's decree actually gave the missile, like building these missiles and research and producing a viable military piece of hardware. It was second only to the development of the Soviet atomic bomb project. So it was super important that they needed to get this done.
Yeah. They wanted these scientists.
So now you move on to like a lot of stuff happened in 1946. So they just they kick stuff into gear right off the bat as soon as they could. So August 24th of that same year, you have Colonel General Ivan Serov, who is actually a secret police officer who served under the deputy commander of the Soviet administration in Germany, or SVAG, I guess, SVAG. He sent a letter to Georgy Malenkov, who is a party official who is overseeing a lot of the rocketry, and he was actually asking for the government to make a decision on the deportation of these German specialists in the USSR. So there's actually a draft of the government decree, which was reviewed by an SVAG commander, V.D. Sokolovsky, and the leaders of various industries were conveniently attached on that letter. So here's one of the things we talk about. It's like, come with us or or you're gonna die. Basically, is the to minimize the attempts to escape, the Soviet authorities pretty much scheduled all these deportations to take place simultaneously across the entire Soviet zone of Germany. And so giving them the shortest period of time between the 15th and the 20th of October in 1946.
It's great because I like to think of it as they were like, they were going door to door in Germany with pamphlets like, listen, we know that the American can offer you many good things, but Russia, we have great. And they just slam the door on them. They're like, oh, no one wants to go. They're like, well, we'll get them. Put his name on the list.
Welcome to Moscow. It's like, we're not in Moscow. You'll be there in 3 days. Okay.
You will be. Come with me.
September of that year, you have the Soviet ministers of the USSR issue another decree. This one was number 2163880S, which was entitled On Removal of Hardware from German Military Enterprises. And this document is credited with officially launching the process of the transfer of German rocket production to the USSR. So for what the resources and things that they have in Germany, they were going to actually move a lot of that materiel and personnel to the actual, Soviet Union proper, and then begin their rocket production.
That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable. That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable.
Now, so again, like we said, they were trying to give them the least amount of time. So none of the German scientists who had actually been, marked for deportation were really told about it. It was a complete and absolute surprise that on October 11th, like we
was the 11th? I thought it was the 22nd.
Oh, 21st. Sorry, 21st. So you have the 21st and October 21st, Grothrup was leading several Germans who attended a meeting in Nordhausen for possible improvements on the V2. So they had actually planned after this meeting to have a party at a local restaurant. And so they had a big old party after this, after they, talked about science. They did all their rocket sciencing, and then they party. I guess scientists party hard, so they were all up until about 3 a.m. And then most had gone home and were completely smashed, and they were in bed when army trucks drove up to each of the selected Germans' places of living. So you have 3 a.m. You just got into bed after this hardcore partying, and there's Soviet army trucks driving up to your front door.
And the crazy thing is like, it's not one of these things where these, the truck pulled up, knock, knock, knock. This was so planned that they had keys. They had keys to people's apartments. So they were just like in the door. All of a sudden, all exits blocked, surrounded with machine guns. They're like, congratulations, comrade. Get up. It's time to mobilize to go work in Russia.
You've won all expenses paid vacation to Moscow. Yay,
congratulations. Surprise. Gather your things and gather your family. Come with us, please. But seriously organized. And they had keys. It was such a mobilized operation that, there's a German engineer, Frank Karl Prickschat. I don't know if that's how you say his name, but he was one of the German engineers recruited under this operation. And he basically said that, we were instantly surrounded in the middle of the night with machine guns pointed at us saying, get up, you're going. And if you had to use a bathroom or anything, people went in first to make sure there was no chance of you escaping. Like, they're like, oh, bathroom's safe. You may go in and then come out because then we go to Russia. Yeah.
You like try to close the stall door. He's like, nope, niet, comrade.
And it's not even that they just took the scientists either. They would take the scientist family. So like it was estimated that more than 2,200 German specialists were taken in this operation and a total of 6,000 people in that single night.
Yeah, they loaded all these people up onto trains like that very night and just shipped them off to a couple of places around Russia, mostly near Moscow. So
these were 5-star resorts, though, I imagine, right? Like big time.
Yeah, most of the places that they sent them to were not. I mean, they wanted the scientists to be comfortable. This wasn't a complete. It wasn't like a pogrom or anything. It wasn't like this wasn't taking war prisoners or nothing like this. It was more like we're going to put you in a very nice place.
It's called the Gulag.
Yeah, most of these people, they lived in kind of nice suburbs where they relocated them to, close to their places of work. Because, of course, you would put these people where you could keep an eye on them. I mean, they definitely weren't trusted by the Soviets. And the Soviets also worried about their day-to-day interactions with people in Russia. Like, if people found out that these people were Germans or they had been ex-Nazis, they knew there would be a problem. So they just wanted a place where put them all in the same kinds of areas so they could keep an eye on them. They built this one place, which is referred to, which is NII-88 Institute, which is one of the rocketry. This is kind of the big one. And they put this one in a decrepit factory in Kaliningrad. So the factories and the places that they actually put them were in various states of disrepair. I know from some accounts, it was like, it would be colder in these buildings. These buildings weren't insulated, nothing. It was like these buildings were colder in the winter, like indoors than it was outdoors. These places kind of really sucked. So they made a lot of German scientists kind of complained about those things. But of course, who's going to listen at that point?
Yeah. Scheiße. They would also not only they took the people, the families, but also their furniture and their belongings. And some of them on this train were then offered a contract being like, well, look at this. Congratulations. Not only you get vacation, but you now win a great job opportunity in Russia. We'll pay you same as Soviet worker. Sign contract, please. Do it now. And they were given these contracts, and many of them have said there was little doubt that you had no choice. They didn't go as far to say anything, but the implications were there that it wasn't a realistic option for you to just say "nay" to these contracts.
For the first several months in the USSR, the legal status of these German specialists was uncertain. The Soviet authorities were still trying to figure out how they were going to treat these captives. So the Germans didn't have any passports. They didn't have any, travel documents. They didn't have anything. And they were not able to send letters home for the first 2 months that they were staying in the USSR.
Oh, I'm sure there was letters sent home. I'm having a wonderful time in Russia. I love it very much. Have happy, good times. See you soon.
But yet a lot of the German scientists and specialists that were working there, it wasn't the living conditions. It wasn't the lack of being able to send correspondence. Their biggest frustration for most of the scientists, or what was reported, was actually their chaos at work. The Germans were very used to working in a very, structured environment where, notes were passed back and forth. It was easy to get information from different departments and things like this. So when this kind of German, efficient work ethic and workplace, workplace organization kind of collided with what was now the monstrous Soviet bureaucracy, it was just, you had chaos at work, more or less. So they didn't have storage facilities at some of these places. So a lot of the hardware that had been delivered from the Nordhausen facility that was still in Germany ended up being unloaded onto just snow-covered ground along the railway line. So everything was rusted
just
out.
heave it off.
Yeah, and these are
Storage.
sensitive materials, like sensitive instruments and things like that, testing equipment. These things are for rocket calibration and these kinds of these.
Do you
kinds of
have
machines.
is there any storage when we get there in Russia? Will there be storage? Russia big, storage everywhere. Free.
So they had documents and blueprints that were generated in Germany were lost in transit, or they were actually grabbed by competing ministries. So you had the Soviet Union was holding itself back and hindering its own progress because you had different ministries within the Soviet Union kind of competing against each other in this weird little kind of power grab and kind of just competition where they were trying to get their certain faction to progress faster than the other. So it just really set everything way, way back.
Yeah, they were just tripping over each other at every turn. It was kind of interesting how that was the thing is they were all trying to vie for attention, all these different ministries. So they would just literally sabotage each other at every turn and make things difficult so that they were the one. I imagine it had something to do with getting funding but there was definitely some issues.
So you really had at this point two rocket development campuses or organizations kind of rise up out of this. You had the one that was established in Nordhausen already, and then you had the other one that was established in Kaliningrad. And the organizational structure in the two couldn't have been more different. In Germany, in Nordhausen facility, you had the Germans and the Soviet scientists were actually integrated into a single organizational structure. So you had nobody kind of outranked the other. You had free communication between the two sides. And then in Kaliningrad, you had the two groups working in complete isolation from each other. So they never talked to each other, never really got the interaction, any of the kind of cooperative progress that most of science is actually based on.
Do you
want to
think
get shit done?
It's funny because when I looked at that, I was thinking, in my head, I was like, I wonder if it's because they were doing something top secret at this other one. And they didn't want any German scientists to know they wanted to compartmentalize it as much as possible. Because when I was looking at that, I went, well, why would they do it here where they integrate them? Which makes sense because then it's, further easier collaboration, right? Especially if you're looking for scientific breakthroughs and, cutting edge science. And then this other one, you have this ass backwards way of we were going to keep you separate and not really make it easy for you guys to talk. So
I think it was more of a matter of just who was supervising each operation, because you had in Nordhausen in Germany, you had, you were far away from Moscow, so you were far away from all of that kind of, I would say bureaucratic bullshit that they were going through over there. And you could kind of run your facility the way you wanted to run it, right? You didn't have, the prospect of Joseph Stalin walking in and looking over your shoulder and be like, why are you treating these Germans so nice? You don't have that. It's it was just
German filth.
Russia, and you don't have that. It was just kind of over there. It was more about the actual progress than it was about, making sure that the Russians looked good or that the Russian scientists looked good. So, in the end, that facility at Kaliningrad really got little done. They were in terms of progress or when compared to the other facility at Nordhausen. So now the main task for the Germans in the NII 88 was the development of proposals for the improvements on the A4 design. Now the A4 was your V2. It was just the alternate version for the name of the V2 rocket. So when they finished with these improvements, German scientists did what they could, and to make it better, this came out known as the G1 or German rocket number 1. So they had their very first V2 launch in October 18th, 1947. So like a year later, they had their very first rocket liftoff, and it flew 207 kilometers, and then it landed 30 kilometers from its target. So yeah, that sucked. So they give it a second try, right? 2 days later, they set up a second one. This one did even more shitty.
I can only imagine it in some sort of like weird Wes Anderson thing where he's like, you have the general, you have all the scientists, like there's like 6 scientists lined up in their white lab coats. And you have the one military general like walk out, hit the button. It just fucking poo, and he just like looks at them and just turns and storms off,
muttering in Russian, just like walking up. The second launch 2 days later, they gave him a chance to like, you need to get your shit in gear, And so they try a second rocket. Second rocket hits the ground 181 kilometers from its target. So like not even in the same fucking neighborhood.
It was some rocket anxiety.
Yeah, it was not a pretty sight. So there, again, you've got all of these ministers and these supervisors, Russian supervisors, pretty much they're fucking losing it. I'm sure at this point they're ready to execute the German scientists. Just be like, you fucking idiots! Like, you make us look like fools.
Yeah, the Americans, they get all the good scientists. We get shit. They had one French Russian. That's where that accent came from.
3 days later, they give him a third try, and this rocket performed also poorly. And so at this point, they issued a bunch of veiled threats, and they were hinting at sabotage by the designers. So it was like really getting real close to kind of shipping off these scientists off to the gulag, getting all expenses paid to Siberia at this point. So they're in pretty deep shit at this point. You had like a kind of competition going on between the two. Like I said, they had the competition kind of going between the Nordhausen and the Kaliningrad, Moscow units of the rocketry programs. The Russian commander who headed up the Nordhausen one, he was also a very competitive person, and he felt he was actually getting slighted by the scientists like that were or the scientists of like the ministries over in Soviet Russia, because they were making such good progress over there, and yet the scientists and the engineers and stuff at Moscow were kind of getting like more resources or more attention than they were of his, because they actually had progressed at such a point where it's like the Soviets got to a point very quickly where it was like, we don't even need the Germans anymore. Like once we've translated all this stuff, like we can do the work, we can do all that stuff. We have a better understanding of what we're doing. And there's no reason for us to really keep the Germans. Like we can just kind of send them off. They did their part, made their contributions, and that was it. Like it was like within a year, the Germans were almost superfluous. Like they didn't really need them for anything. I know Grothrup would make, reports later, kind of like in his notes and things like this, where he was like, the Russians would come in, they would look at their notes, they'd ask some questions, and then they would like leave, and that was it. They wouldn't like talk about it or anything like that. And then like the Germans became more and more isolated within their own rocket programs, because they were eventually just kept out of everything. Like, because it was, once the Russians had what they wanted, they're like, oh, okay, we understand the concepts, like we got this. And then they just they was like, we don't need the Germans anymore. They didn't include them in any of their kind of research meetings or anything like that. So the German knowledge just kind of stagnated. They couldn't do any research. They couldn't do anything. So they were just kind of, yeah.
Shit aside.
So by the end of 1950, you really had, the Russians felt like they had everything that they had needed from them, and most of the Germans who had actually worked in the facilities over and around Moscow were sent back to Germany.
Congratulations, comrade. Your work contract vacation is over.
It's a weird story. Like it's definitely something that it's,
because it doesn't really sound like they were free to leave.
I mean, they
Like,
weren't.
when you-
They couldn't go anywhere. They took their families with them, who they could take, and then the German engineers and scientists who were working on these things, it was kind of like the only thing they had to do. So, more or less, I mean, they were happy to do it. And like their living conditions where they were, like they put them up in like mansions and vacation houses near where they were going to be placed, like where the factories were going to be built. Or where the old factories were. They weren't living in squalor or anything like that, because you really just wanted to keep your scientists happy at that point and get all the information they could. But these are the scientists and things that, you know, they put Russia's Sputnik into space. Like this is where all of that kind of work came from.
And also, like, because, you know, where the alien theorists theorizing, this operation has a little bit of a UFO connection. Mind you, the threads to this get a little looser. But Annie Jacobson wrote a book called Area 51. It's like the hidden knowledge or something other. And in it, she talks about this operation of the Russians smash and grabbing. And she said, you know, we've theorized about it, but about Hitler potentially having a flying saucer. And she says that, you know, potentially they did. And if they did, it was designed by the Horten brothers. These were German, like Nazi aerospace engineers who made some of the, you know, the most technically advanced airplanes of the 40s. I think they had the first jet-powered flying wing. They had designs for like a half-moon shaped, like jet-propelled flight. I think it was called the world's first jet-powered flying wing was the Horten Ho 229. And in this book, Annie Jacobson says that the Americans were very interested during all of this in finding these brothers. And it is theorized by her that these brothers ended up in Russia. They were some of the scientists grabbed. And she says that the Russians potentially had, while everyone was focused on V2 rockets and, you know, all of this kind of stuff, the Russians were busy at making flying saucers using the Horten's revolutionary designs. And she goes on to say that this design was so good that she thinks that, you know, maybe up until even today, that Russia has the most technological advanced like planes in the world. And an interesting one for her with this is, and how it comes to the UFO connection, is that she theorizes that the Roswell crash in the United States was actually one of these Soviet spy planes, which was a flying saucer. And the bodies that were found inside were Soviet like pilots. And this kicked off the United States in trying to, like, you know, come up with better planes to try to match the superiority of these spy planes that the Soviets now had. Kind of thought that was an interesting.
Her theory kind of hinges on the thing that the bodies that they retrieved from the, you know, bodies, I put those in quotation marks. The bodies that they retrieved from the crash were supposed to be deformed experiments or something. Like she kind of, I believe she implies that, or directly states, I haven't read the whole book, but that, you know, Joseph Mengele had a hand in like creating these like deformed, stunted growth pilots. And they were like, okay, so they load them up onto their UFO and launch them over the United States, which is, you know, I don't, sure.
It's an interesting theory.
It's an interesting theory for sure. And, I have my doubts about it because I don't think there's anything that had I'm not sure what the flight range capabilities of anything during that time of what they were building. Like you'd have to if you're some type of craft. So, they say that they recovered, there are reports, but 2 to 3 bodies recovered from the Roswell crash. So if you have a 3-person aircraft of some type, jet propulsion, and so somehow you would have to get this craft within distance of Roswell, New Mexico, so cruising distance. So like the only way you would be able to do that is you'd either have to launch it from an aircraft carrier like off the coast of California or maybe Mexico, or you could say, oh, maybe they launched it off a submarine. But I really doubt that you would have a submarine that could launch a jet aircraft off of it, because we don't even have one of those now. I mean, you might be able to shoot a drone off of there, but a 3-person craft, even small, child size pilots would be that's a stretch.
And from my when I was reading this theory, I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting. She said that these were basically just manned drones. Like their only use was for reconnaissance. But then for me, like same kind of thing. I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense. There's some glaring issues for me. And one is that, the military initially made that report of going and needing child-sized coffins, making a report to the newspaper being like, we've recovered a craft, this and this of unknown origins, basically saying it's aliens, and then coming back and being like, no, none of that. It was nothing. So it's like, to me, like that stuff doesn't add up. And then if you look at the Russian or the American spy plane program, like is it the U-2? What was the one? That's the high altitude one. The high altitude one. If you get into that, I mean, that at the time was unparalleled. It was so good that I'm reading their first test flights. They were so high that they were actually the Russians were like, there's something up there. They couldn't figure it out how, so they couldn't send any jets. They were trying to intercept it, but they had no capabilities to get this thing out of the sky. And this is a time where if they had the capabilities to blow that thing out of the fucking sky, if they knew it was there, they would have. And
even to not even blow it up, but even if they had some sort of aircraft that could challenge it. Because that's usually, because even today they still do that shit. It's still like a fucking dick measuring contest out on the fucking Pacific Ocean where you've got, Soviet MiGs buzzing F-22s and, FA-18s and stuff. They just kind of fly close to each other. It's a Top Gun thing, go inverted, flip them the bird. It's really, if you had some sort of craft that could do that, they would have done it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so they're saying Annie Jacob theorized that they would have this craft that like you said, Dan, it's either so it would be some light years ahead of what we had at the time, fuel efficient, or they're launching it from some craft. But then if it's that capable of outmaneuvering us in the States, they would have had something to challenge it. Why wouldn't they? Right? That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I thought it was an interesting theory.
But yeah, those technological advancements in rocketry and aircraft have gone a long way. We were talking about, if you're mentioning Russian drones, you can talk about just the other day, I saw they rolled out the S-70. It's like Okhotnik B, which is the flying wing Russian unmanned drone. It looks like a little mini stealth bomber, and it's unmanned drone, and they're gonna start producing them, I think, in the next few years, mass producing them or distribute them to their aircrafts and to their military. But it is a when you look at it, you're like, it's a very flying wing type of thing. The stuff that comes out and the stuff that we see, I think, yes, a lot of people would probably agree that is a very small fraction of the technology that is available, to intelligence and military services. We only get to see the real tip of the iceberg. We talked about it on the other podcast in the news just the other day. They had the CIA drone that was designed to be powered by a mini nuclear reactors, more or less. And it looks like something crazy. It looks like a little bird kind of wing, but it's also swept wing kind of craft. Anything could be flying up there, especially if you have, we had the capability of what the U-2 is capable of in the 1950s and 60s. And, now are kind of, it's like where could technology possibly be at this point is, kind of anybody's guess.
Yeah, like who knows what kind of secret spy planes or, secret crafts that are fucking buzzing around right now. Like I could only imagine. But that's basically the gist on Operation
Osoaviakhim.
Osoaviakhim.
I had a hard time trying to find out how to pronounce that one. I found like one video on YouTube of somebody actually pronouncing the name, but it's that kind of that wraps up the whole thing. I know we'll probably go more in depth about Operation Paperclip at some point, because the Osoaviakhim, most of the reports that we have come from Helmut Grothrub and like his wife, and maybe some U.S. intelligence reports, and it pens out like an interesting narrative. But we definitely probably have more complete records and things about the U.S. version, Operation Paperclip. So that'll definitely come up at some point, probably in the main case files.
Yeah, 100%. Well, any final points there, Dan?
Nope.
All right. Well, as we always say at the end of these things, thanks everyone for being Patreon. We got tons more stuff coming your way, and keep those eyes on the skies. Peace.
Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort, meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today. The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place.